So let's give a big round of applause to Margy.
Like you, I'm sure, my home is my safe place. But that changed late one night in April of 2015 when two strangers came and knocked on our front door. And there stood a young couple in their 20s. And my husband admitted later that he let them in the house because the look on their face, he was sure that they were about to tell him that they had hit one of our dogs. But they didn't. What they said was they were on their way home from having visited his grandmother and went into this kind of odd explanation of why they were concerned for the grandmother. And we're thinking, well, so what's that got to do with us and how can we help? So we suggested, you can use our phone, call a family member, maybe contact the sheriff. They didn't want to do that. So my husband suggested that he just call a grandmother and see if she answered the phone. So he did. He called. She answered. He faked a misdialed, number and hung up. And that seemed to satisfy the couple. So the whole visit in our house was about 30 minutes. And they were polite, complimented us on our house. But they just gave me this odd feeling. And still I thought, how, down our gravel road, how did they choose us to stop and ask for help? And we even asked them that question. And they said they'd been out driving around and they were just drawn to our house. I'm thinking, I want to believe it, but I just don't. So as soon as they left, we called the sheriff, described what happened. And the whole thing was so odd and unnerving. I had a lot of trouble sleeping. In the morning, my husband went to work and I called in sick because I just had this gut feeling I needed to stay at the house. So by noon, of course, I convinced myself that I was overreacting and I went to the office. So later that day, I'm on my way home and my cell phone rings and it's my husband and he says, our house and our neighbor across the road was broken into today. And I'm thinking, shit, I knew it. They were casing our house. The whole time they were there casing the house. And I got to the house. I dreaded walking in. I walked in. It looked like a bomb went off inside. But pretty quickly I realized that most of what I was looking at did not belong to us. And I'm just kind of drawing a blank. Well, by the time the two deputies who were still at our neighbors across the road found this out, they came right over. And now our house turned into a crime scene full of evidence. And we were told to step outside. So we're standing out in the front yard for a couple hours. It gets to be about 9 o'clock. It's dark. It's getting cold. It's April, after all. And I decide I'm just going to go sit in my car. I'm over it. And as I turn to head for the car, I see this other car had pulled in the driveway. And I'm thinking, oh, it must be our neighbor. So I'm walking over. And, hey, how's it going? And the car door opens, and the light inside goes on. And I freeze because it's the couple from the night before. And he says, hey, we just came for a visit and I brought dinner. And I'm just stunned. My mind goes blank. I don't know what to say until I remember there's a sheriff and a deputy standing in my house. So I said, fine then, let's all go inside. So I turned, beeline it for the house. And within minutes, the couple is quietly sitting in my living room in handcuffs. So we're standing in the hallway now, out of sight, and we can hear one of the deputies questioning the couple. And the young man admits that he found our spare key outside, and that's how they got in. And, oh, by the way, he's got a gun in his car. And I'm thinking, holy shit. I mean, it's a good thing the cops were still there when they came, right? So midnight, the last of the cops, the sheriff and the deputy are leaving, the suspects, their vehicle, all of the stuff they stashed in our house, they're packed up and they're headed for jail. And I'm thinking, case closed. This is great. So I took a couple days off of work. I'm replacing deadbolts, putting new outdoor motion activated lights on the house. And, at this point, I'm thinking it's a wake-up call, right? We got off really, really lucky. Our house wasn't damaged, nothing was stolen, and so it was all good. But every day we learned something more, and it was all troubling. One of the days I had off, I opened up a kitchen drawer, and here's a loaded handgun that belongs to the suspect. We learned that the grandmother bailed them out of jail. All of the evidence that was taken, that was stashed at our house, it wasn't stolen. It was theirs. Because the night they first came to our house, when they left, they went back to his stepdad's house where they were staying, and they informed him that they found the perfect house and they were moving out. So the day they broke in, they were moving into our house. And now they were out of jail. So the very next day, I called the prosecutor's office in tears, begging him to revoke bail. And I've never known this kind of fear before. I told him, I'm afraid to stay at home alone. I'm afraid to leave my house for fear they're going to come back while I'm gone. And he explains he was sorry, but really the only thing he could do was prepare for the case. And so he prepared for the case, and months go by, and courts are delayed. And the only thing that I found that I could do that gave me any comfort was to have a routine. So every time I walked through a door, it got locked behind me. I carried my keys and my cell phone with me at all times. I began to obsessively clean my house. It was like spring cleaning on steroids. And that seemed to help, but it was also this sick fear and anger feeding my paranoia, and it just kept getting worse. So months later, the prosecutor calls mid-September and says that the suspects were pleading guilty, and soon, within 2 weeks, they would be sentenced. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. It's such a relief. It's the first relief I've felt in 5 months. At the same time, the thought of going to court and facing them was just like a whole new level of scary that we weren't sure we were even ready for, and debated if we should even go to the sentencing. But then decided somebody had to go. I mean, how else would we know what happened? So we agreed that I would go first to the young woman's sentencing, and then my husband would go to the guys a week later. So day of sentencing comes. I go to the courthouse, and I walk in, and I see the couple sitting in the hallway with this older woman. It's their grandmother, and she looks tired. And I go into the courtroom, and I'm panicked. I'm thinking, this is just too much for me. I can't do this. I cannot do this alone. But the prosecutor comes over, and he explains that once the defense agrees to the charges, that I would have an opportunity to get up and say something in front of the judge. And so the judge is about to rule. He's heard the case. He's about to rule, and the young woman gets to speak first. And she turns in her seat, and she looks directly at me, and through tears, she apologizes to me for what she did to us. And I look at her, and she looks so small and lost. And I'm thinking, I have children older than her. Where are her parents? And then it was my turn to get up and speak to the judge. And I said, I'm really conflicted. I almost didn't even come today. I have very little faith in our penal system, because once she serves her sentence, I'm pretty sure her chances of turning her life around are gone. I mean, what she needs is counseling and drug rehab. And what I want is to feel safe in my house again. And I don't want to think about these suspects, as I refer to them still, every day, every time I lock a door, every time I hear my dogs bark. And honestly, I don't want them thinking about me either. And then, out of nowhere, I hear myself say, what I really want is to just give her a hug. And the judge stares at me, and he nods, and I walk across the front of the courtroom, and she and I hug, and we cry, and we each tell the other that we're sorry. And I felt this weight lifted off of me. Now, I'm not going to kid you. I'm still a work in progress. But I have learned 3 really valuable lessons from this experience. One is always be aware of your surroundings. Second, listen to your gut, but listen to your heart. And third, fear is a burden. And on that day, in that courtroom, it was so much easier to show compassion than it was to hang on to that fear. Thank you.